What's up, Broncos country, and welcome to another episode of Keep Your Eye on the Ball, your channel dedicated to all things Denver Bronco football from the point of view of me, an analyst, a journalist, but also a fan. And this will be the last episode of the inaugural season of Keep Your Eye on the Ball. It's been awesome doing these every week. This week, we'll be talking about some maybe under-mentioned storylines going into tomorrow's game versus the Raiders, as this amounts to essentially a glorified preseason game. But just because it doesn't have any bearing on the playoffs does not mean that they do not matter. Also, Bleacher Report broke a very interesting story concerning the futures of Sean Payton and General Manager George Paton, and I will be giving you my thoughts on that. As always, remember to like, remember to share, remember to subscribe, remember to comment, remember to buy me presents, and now a word from our sponsor. Just kidding, I don't have a sponsor yet. The first one being the young players for next year. And now I'm not talking about like Jaquan McMillan. I'm not talking about Jaleel McLaughlin. Those guys will pretty much have roles for next season, bearing some kind of maybe injury or just unforeseen circumstance. I am talking about guys who could be filling in for free agency, or could be filling in for people that are departing in free agency this year. One of these being Drew Sanders. Now, Josey Jewell is a free agent at the end of this year. Josey Jewell has been listed on some websites as a top 100 free agent. And with the amount of money that's going to be spent trying to get past the Russ contract, and also maybe retaining some high profile people here in the future, not this season, but next season, I can see where maybe Jewell is not brought back. This opens the door for a guy like Drew Sanders. Sanders is a third-round pick this year. He is very, very raw, and you can tell that in his play, and you can tell that in how they're bringing him along. But he does have some plays every once in a while when he gets to display that athleticism, and he is a freak. Just you know, from everything I've seen, he had a play against the New England Patriots where he got sucked into the play and still was able to recover enough to make a chase down tackle, even though that his eyes had taken him out of the play. With the lack of speed on defense, especially from the linebacking core, I think that Drew Sanders could be somebody that gets an extended look on Sunday. Another player that we could see a little bit of is Riley Moss. Riley Moss is still part of the same draft class as Drew Sanders and was taken in the third round. He did have a sports hernia at the start of the year, which really, A, it kept him off the field, and B, it's really stunted his development, especially with Fabian Moreau taking over as the opposite corner of Patrick Surtain. And he's not the nickel corner because Jaquan McMillan came on like a gangbuster and took that job. Now, Moss has gotten into some action. He's been in the dime packages on some occasions. He's also made his way onto special teams. He hasn't shown a lot. However, if you go back to his tape at Iowa and just look at some of the measurables he had, this is another guy that I think could easily be in play for a starting job next season. Again, the corner spot outside of Patrick Surtain is going to get a lot of attention. And while Fabian Moreau has done a really good job and been a great surprise for us, he's on a one-year deal. Who knows what the market's going to be like? And you're basically got a guy who has all the measurables and has the talent and makes a fraction of the money. So I think that could be an interesting thing to see if they maybe spoon-feed him some more opportunities on Sunday. And the last person I'm going to talk about, and the last issue I'm going to talk about, is Lucas Kroll. Lucas Kroll started out on the practice squad, has been elevated up to the full roster as of late. Kroll is a beast. Like, he is massive. He is 6'5". He's 250 pounds, and the guy can run a 4.5. All the physical stuff is there. If you've seen some of the plays that he's made, especially the touchdown catch that he had versus the Patriots, man, there's a lot to like about the way he runs and the athleticism. He also has an kind of an intense demeanor to him, which I really like. So I think Kroll could really figure into the mix, especially since we don't know the how Greg Dulcich is going to be, from game to game, since he has still showed an inability to stay on the field. So if maybe they can get Kroll figured into the mix, that's a tight end weapon that we can use that we haven't had. So as I mentioned, there was an interesting article that came out from Bleacher Report basically intimating that Sean Payton will have final say on George Paton's job at the end of this year. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, Sean Payton's the coach, George Paton is the general manager, why would Sean have final say over George? I think it's a great question. I've been wondering that myself too, and it took me back a little ways. So let's take a trip down memory lane, where we had another coach in Denver by the name of Mike Shanahan. Maybe you've heard of him. And Shanahan was given ultimately roster management decisions by then owner Pat Bowlen. After a season where we didn't make the playoffs, Shanahan had his end of the year meeting with Bowlen where he wanted to switch defensive coordinators again. Bowlen came back and said, listen, I don't think firing another guy after one season is really going to fix the defense for next season. And I also have some concerns about the roster management that you've been doing lately. So I think Nolan needs to stay, and I think we need to talk about the roster. Shanahan's response was essentially, well, I control the roster. It's my team. I control roster decisions. It's my decision. And Bowlen ended up firing him over that. Now, we fast forward to today, and we have a similar scenario where the coach is ultimately making the personnel decisions. Now, it does say in the article that the two do have a good working relationship, which is fine. And I don't think that George Paton has done a bad job. Now, I want to clarify, I don't think he's done a perfect job. But a perfect job and a good job are two very different things, and I do think he has done a good job. His drafts have mostly been solid, and we've gotten contributors from those drafts. His free agents have mostly been good, and they've been on good contracts, and we've been able to, and they've plugged holes in the roster that we've needed to fill. The biggest thing working against George Paton is the Russell Wilson deal. It was a bad trade, it was a bad contract, and it's trending towards a messy divorce. Now, if you take all of those things, all the good things he's done, and you kind of weigh them against the Russell Wilson contract and that whole situation, what balances out? And I'm saying this rhetorically. I don't really know. I think it helps that maybe Peyton likes having somebody else to run the personnel of it. Maybe it means that maybe Sean likes having most of the control, and who wouldn't? But I don't know that I trust when the coach is also the personnel person, because it's two different perspectives that you really need to have, and it's easy to kind of let some lines get blurred when you're wearing both hats. Now, if George isn't the guy, hey, there's nothing that we can do with that. They may have two very different philosophies on how they want the team built. And guess what? That's ultimately that's the Penners' decision, and the Penners have given Sean Payton that power, right or wrong, and we'll see the fruits of that in a couple of years. But for me, my concern is giving one person too much authority over the team. And historically, we've seen how that worked out, and it wasn't good. And we've seen how other teams have reacted to this, where they've given their coach just way too much control, and it also isn't good. So while I think there's a case to be made that maybe George should lose his job. And I can even get behind that, stuff happens, it didn't work out, it's time to move on. And I don't disagree with that. I do wholesale disagree with Sean Payton having control over that. And I think if the Penners are really serious about building a winning culture and a winning atmosphere, they need to put the reins on Sean Payton. And if George isn't their guy, go hire somebody that is. So that way there's a clear and consistent message from ownership to the front office to the coach. Ultimately, that's how good organizations are built. So I know that this has been kind of a weird episode because I didn't break it up into nice little chunks and I kind of went on 2 longer monologues, but it's going to be kind of a weird game tomorrow, and it's been that kind of a season, so everything needs to be wrapped up in a nice little bow. Again, I say thank you so much for anybody who's watching this and subscribed and left me comments and likes and views from the bottom of my heart. I really do appreciate it. As always, like, share, comment, subscribe, buy me presents, the whole 9 yards. On a housekeeping note, because the season is ending, I will not be doing a weekly YouTube channel. I may go to every other week, or I may even be doing just as breaking news comes out. I'm getting some thoughts together on how I want to cover the team going into the draft, and I'll be putting out more comment when draft time comes. Draft time is one of my favorite times because it basically lets me watch college football and kind of get an idea of the guys that'll be out there. But again, I'll be keeping you guys updated on where I think the content will be. I will be producing content, just not on a weekly basis. It's just a lot of work, and especially it's a lot of work with somebody who has a 40-hour-a-week job and a toddler on top of this. So again, thank you for sticking with me this entire season. It's been fun. I'm already looking forward to the off season, and I'm looking forward to 2024 and what that brings us. So as always, keep your eye on the ball, and I'll see you next time.